Welcome to the Library of Humanity. I had a recent video about climate change, and that was a more scientific kind of video. This one's going to be more about how to go beyond climate change through your consciousness. And who is teaching us about consciousness, and not just who, but like what is teaching us about consciousness, is the source of consciousness itself, which one source is plants via psychedelic medicines such as ayahuasca, DMT, and psilocybin mushrooms. Okay, so these are a very, very good method to going into your consciousness and becoming your consciousness. And psychedelic drugs or psychedelic medicines can help you see what that is. And I'm talking about the you, the deep you, the big you, which is consciousness with a capital C, the consciousness that goes and pervades everywhere. So if you think of like what God is omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. That means he's everywhere and has all power and knows everything. Now that's kind of how consciousness works too, but consciousness is more like the entire field of everything, or how everything manifests. And that's what psychedelic drugs or medicines can help you realize. So ayahuasca, for example, when you go down to the Amazon, it'll put you in the state. Now ayahuasca is like this elongated, like 4 or 5 hours of DMT. So it's actually DMT, and it's basically Mother Earth. Now what plants are is the Mother Earth or Gaia speaking to you, consciousness. So it's consciousness speaking to consciousness about consciousness. Okay, so like ayahuasca in the Amazon, it's a vine. When I was in Ecuador, I have actually a Ecuadorian shirt, right? Viva Ecuador. When I was down there, I saw the ayahuascan vine, and my guide pointed it out to me in Spanish. And he said when he tried it, he had no effect, but I don't know if I believe him or not. But this vine, and now if you go with a shaman, so the shamans are one of the few people in the world that actually know how to make ayahuasca. So, and again, I'm gonna put how to spell ayahuasca in the commentary. It's really, really difficult to spell. It's actually the Spanish version with the Y and an H, with a silent H. But ayahuasca is the earth speaking to you. So the earth is consciousness, and you are consciousness, and it's trying to point to consciousness. Okay, so consciousness is the way that we will, or we, meaning consciousness, will survive climate change, right? So why? Because right now, what is producing climate change is human beings, Homo sapiens. And our culture pretends or taught us that we are human beings. It created this myth that we, consciousness, is a human being, right? So like when you grow up, you go to kindergarten, first grade, all the way to college, like you learn this myth of the human being, and that's what we are. Now, yes, we are a human being, but I'm saying we are much more than that deep down. We are consciousness first and foremost. We are consciousness. Okay, so for example, when I have had some of my deepest experiences through meditation, but also my experience on a psychedelic drug, is that the human being or humanness is one aspect of consciousness. So we are not human beings ultimately. Human beings are just doing what they are doing without free will. Now, free will is an entire different subject, but this free will is happening inside of this consciousness. So human beings have quote unquote free will, but we are the consciousness that is like observing all of this climate change, this earth. But we are the earth. Like this is all oneness. This is all connected. Okay, and you see this when you have an experience, maybe say on psilocybin mushrooms, right, where you see like what I am, the deep I am, is connected or is one with everything around me. And it's not just that, it's not just the things, because they seem separate, right? But when you are in that zone, you see that it's literally the same thing. It's deep sameness, as actualize.org says, is everything is one, meaning it's deeply the same, yet paradoxically, it all appears separate or in different identities, like a lamp or a car or a dog. Now that seems separate, yet again, I would actually suggest, while on psychedelics, meditating or doing yoga or something where you're going into your consciousness. Now, because psychedelics can really, really help. Why? Because it's the earth itself speaking to itself. So the earth, again, consciousness, consciousness coming together, right? So climate change is like this phenomenon where the earth is trying to communicate to you humans, like, reduce the consumption, come together and see that we are all deeply the same. Okay, and that is the message. Like, it's actually much more simple than you think. Like, yes, climate change policy is very, very complex. Like, how can humans, like all 7 to 8 billion of us, how are we going to survive through this climate change, right? Which in my previous video, I showed you through science, through the Guy McPherson article, that actually that's not going to happen, that all 8 billion of us are going to survive out of this climate change phenomenon. No, by 2030, it's very, very likely that most of the 8 billion human beings are going to pass away before 2030. So if you want the science behind it, I would suggest going to my previous video about how climate change is now, by the Guy McPherson article. However, in this video, what I'm saying is that how can you get around that is by no longer being your human self, going beyond your ego, going beyond your separate self. This myth that we created in our society where everything is separate, where it's like, I see the tree. What about that I equals tree, right? Or I see the earth. What about I equals earth, right? Where everything is deeply the same. And now that is the message. Like, saying that everything is one is very, very simple to say, okay? But it sounds profound when you're saying it. But what's even more profound is experiencing it. First and foremost is when you are losing the identity of yourself. I can't speak about that enough, is when you go deeply, you lose the experience of ego. You lose the experience that I am this tiny self, and you become the big self, or the big I am, like earth entirely, or my environment, right? I've had this experience where it's your heart chakra. My heart chakra opened and entered into its environment. So what I began to identify as my environment, everything that I could sense became what I was. So I was sensing Kyle, however, I was way beyond Kyle, whatever that is. I sensed like the environment. It's very, very hard to explain. So basically, my consciousness, when you experience it, is not just here, it's also there. Paradoxically and simultaneously, where we usually think that consciousness has a location in my brain or behind my eyes. Consciousness does not have a location because it is what everything or location is happening inside of. Okay, but I'm saying inside because it's really hard to use language, because language connotes location or place, like here versus there. But when you go beyond language and you just go into your consciousness via psychedelics and meditation, you see that it's just consciousness, and consciousness just is. It just is. Like, there's no way that I can tell you what it is. You can just maybe experience the experiencer of the experience. So who is experiencing your life? Your life. Whose life is it? Go into that, right? I've had videos on self-inquiry where you go into what is experiencing this experience. Now that is what is going to survive or continue after the death of the human. So the human is going to die. What is going to continue surviving is the the deep I, the I am that has always been there. So you experience yourself no matter if you're dreaming, if you're sleeping deeply in dreamless sleep, or what you were before you were born. Can you remember what you were before you were born? What were you experiencing? You're experiencing the I am nothingness. So it's the I am without the manifestation of separateness. Okay, so now I'm getting really into like meditation and philosophy, but the idea is that the human can only experience the separate. Okay, but on psychedelics you can experience the unity, the oneness. Okay, and that's going to be very, very scary. That's going to be very, very scary to the ego, because the ego is going to die. And I have a video on ego death, but that's the experience of the ego. But it's not really like the ego is dying. It's more like you stop associating with the ego, and you begin to associate with the complete consciousness. And that's what you ultimately are. So it's actually very scary at first, but then it becomes extremely familiar when you are connected, or you become one with the oneness, or one with the consciousness that you always have been. Because actually your ego is the lie and the BS. However, the consciousness is your true deep identity. Okay, and it's actually what you always have been, is your consciousness. Okay, so again, the earth is conscious. Okay, not just that, but the earth is consciousness, and it is communicating to its brothers and sisters that we call human beings. Human beings aren't the only ones with consciousness. Our society taught us that consciousness equals the brain. Okay, so we think that like only smart animals have consciousness, and then things like ants don't have consciousness, or that plants don't have consciousness, or the earth in general doesn't have consciousness, but that's complete BS. Consciousness is the essence of everything that you ever have experienced. So even a dinner table, yes, is existing inside of consciousness. It's not actually a dinner table, it's just consciousness acting as a dinner table. Or like the earth is consciousness acting as an earth. Okay, and it's deliberate. This is all happening for a reason of unity. Okay, realizing that everything is everything else. That is the realization, that you experience that everything is everything else. And that is the realization of the earth trying to communicate to itself, that we call human beings. Because human beings believe that they aren't the earth, so that's why they don't treat it as themselves. Right? So when you begin to see that the earth is I, then that instantly solves climate change. Okay? The problem is when we try to solve climate change through the idea of separateness, we're never going to actually solve climate change, because it's through the dialogue that climate change or the earth is not what I am. And that's when you, like, how do I convince you that you should treat your arm, like you shouldn't harm your arm, right? You shouldn't hurt your arm, right? You don't want to hurt your arm because you know that your arm is yourself. And same with your eyes and your feet, right? And that's the same with the earth. Like the earth is your legs, the earth is your arms, the earth is your brain. Why would you want to hurt yourself? Right? That just doesn't make any sense. Same with animals and plants. This is all exactly what you are. Okay? Is everything else. Everything is everything else. So you are everything else is everything, and it's deeply the same. Okay? And so I think I've been hammering this point home. If you like the video, you can click the like button. If you have any questions or want to debate, you can comment below. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.